You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Los Angeles Rams fans, welcome to the LA Football Show here on the LA Football Network. Our city, our network. Excited to be with you today as we get into your Los Angeles Rams. Been a disappointing season, obviously, but still a lot to talk about, especially with some moves that came down today. So we will be talking briefly about the past game, a tough 27-20 loss to the Saints in New Orleans, but then also some housekeeping and moves, transactions that came down the pipeline on this Tuesday that we're going to get into. So joined as always by my good friend Jamal Madney. What's up, brother? How are we doing today? Yeah, how are you?
Doing well, right? Excited to get into it with the Rams. It's such a rich conversation, I feel like, right now, because there's so much to talk about on the field, and now there's as much or more to talk about off the field. So excited to get into it with you.
Well, it's kind of symbolic, right? Because now at 3-7, ultimately the Rams season is probably over. And so now with these moves, it's like we've already gotten into off-season mode. It's already in transactions and free agency and roster construction and building and stuff like that. So it's almost a symbolism of how this season has gone, that here we are going into week 12, that these moves are already being made, which we haven't even said yet. But if you don't know, we will say right after this, because this show today is brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use the promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. You're going to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first time deposit. Plenty of great sports to bet on. Basketball's in full swing. Hockey's in full swing. You got the obscure sports out there. And obviously football is just at the midway point, or just a little after the midway point when it comes to NFL. But you got bowl season coming up for college. So plenty of stuff. Head to betonline.ag. Once again, that's promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV. Gets you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Jamal, first, before we get into it, we were talking a little bit when we recorded last night offline. Both of us are already in Christmas mode. So I wanted to ask you this, because I'm rocking the Christmas sweater again already. Like, how early is too early to be fully engulfed in Christmas season, in your opinion?
Oh, you know, my wife and mother-in-law have very strict rules about that. So I'm glad you asked. It is November 1st. November 1st is officially the holiday season. You can kind of go bonkers with Christmas and the holidays from November 1st onwards. And they have a very strict policy that you cannot be past the new year and still have the tree up. So it's a very strict, tight ship run in the Madney household. It's a November 1st to December 31st is the de facto holiday season.
Well, I'm very surprised, but also pleased to hear that. I don't know your wife's maiden name off the top of my head, but because I feel like most people out there say the beginning date for Christmas is like Thanksgiving. But I'm the same way. November 1st, as soon as Halloween's over, it's Christmas season for me. Yes. And agreed, though, once New Year's hit, it's time to pack it in, just because then it's over. It's into the new year altogether. So, all right, we're on the same page there. So how many Christmas movies have you guys divulged in yet? Are you into that yet, or just decorating?
Yeah, the Christmas movies start gearing up. I mean, my wife has been really busy with the Thanksgiving preparation. We've got, we're having 10 folks at our place this year for Christmas, and it's the first time my wife is hosting Christmas for the family since we've gotten married. So it's a big deal, and she's sort of feeling the pressure to really sort of make everyone enjoy and really sort of be wowed by the spread and all of that. So I'm excited about what's to come, and we've got some favorites. The Holiday is a big one. Elf is a big one. Some great Christmas movies. I personally think that Die Hard is the greatest Christmas movie of all time. My wife begs to differ, but I think, that was technically a Christmas movie and one of my all-time favorites. So lots that we're going to kind of jump into. Home Alone is a great one. And so, we sort of go through the rotation a little bit here for these 2 months.
Yeah, the Die Hard, the old chicken and egg argument with that one. But I'm with you. I agree it's a Christmas movie. I think once December hits, we'll have to do a segment of our top 10 favorite Christmas movies this year.
That.
Because this will give it away a little bit, but you just listed two of my probably top three in Elf and the Holiday. Love those two. I always save those for as we get closer. I kind of have it the way I do it, or I guess I'll say me because my wife partakes, but I kind of am the boss in terms of like the movie selections. It's like November 1st through December 1st is kind of like we get the cheesy, like the lesser known commodity of Christmas movies, or like the really cheesy Hallmark or Lifetime movies, which, by the way, if you don't know, Peacock has all the Hallmark movies on. So we've been hitting that hard since November. I think we're like 15 or 20 movies in already when it comes to Christmas. But I start with those, and then we kind of go into all the new Netflix ones that have come out, the Christmas Switch, the Christmas Prince, all those ones. And then when we get to, the week of or 10 days prior is when we get into the bread and butter, Love Actually, The Holiday, Elf, all the good ones. Wild card one. Have you seen The Night Before with Seth Rogen and Joseph Gordon-Levitt?
No. I think we got to add that one this year for sure. Yeah, Love Actually is an all-time classic. So we saved that close to Christmas Eve. But oh man, I got to check that one out.
Night Before. It's definitely a raunchier adult Christmas one, but it's super funny. Also, have you seen Office Christmas Party?
Yes.
Similar vibes to that. Very different storyline, but similar vibes in the fact that it's like a little raunchier. But
nice. Okay.
Yeah, we'll add some to your resume there. So, all right, let's get into this Rams chat because tough loss, 3-7, season ultimately over. Do you want to talk about the news first, the transactions? Do you want to talk game first and then get to that?
Well, maybe we go in chronological order.
Okay, game first. 27-20. Stafford ends up going out in this one. Played fairly well. 11 of 18, 159 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kind of got banged up on a hit in the end zone and then got banged up again. I mean, he got hit quite a bit. He's been hit all season. I mean, that's just the state of this offensive line. Ends up leaving the game. Still really, there's been no like true news about the concussion protocol he's in, or if he's in the protocol, or if he has symptoms. Obviously, that's what we're all assuming. And if that's the case, that's, the second time in as many weeks, which is very, not only discouraging, but very serious and a real deal for Stafford and his future health. And all of a sudden, 2 games now, or 2 days since the game, it's kind of like, may Stafford retire? Is this the last we'll see of Matthew Stafford on a football field, which is crazy. He's gone from Super Bowl champ to that in a matter of 10 weeks, but that's where we are. What was your thoughts on just Stafford, I guess, and where he sits after this game?
Yeah, Ryan, I think it's interesting. I think the combination of this being a second incident in a 3 to 4 week period, coupled with the blowback from the whole Tua situation this year that dominated so much of the first half of the season, coupled with Matthew Stafford's wife being so vocal about concerns about his long-term health and future of just being a dad and a husband and a family man. I think all of those elements makes it feel a little bit like this could be the end of Matthew Stafford's season, because I don't know if there is a ton of value in bringing him back. I know we talked about 3-7. Let's just go ahead and pencil in 3-8, Ryan, going to Kansas City with the roster that the Rams have. That might be one of the greatest regular season upsets of the last 10 years in the NFL if that actually happens. So I'm ready to sort of pencil the Rams in at 3-8. And then at that point, without Cooper Kupp, even if you win 6 games in a row, you're at 9-8. I'm not sure that's enough to get through third place in the division with the way the Niners are starting to put it together, and the Seahawks. I think it's a tall order. Still games at Seattle, at Green Bay. So I think we're firmly in that situation where we're thinking about next year. I would have loved to have seen Stafford play against Kansas City, because I think it would have been a great barometer game for the coaching staff and management to say, who are the dudes that we really want back next year and who are competitors and who are value adds to this team? And just how far is that gap on the defensive side of the ball with the offensive line, with the running game relative to where we need to go next year? So in an ideal world, if he wasn't injured, I would have wanted him to play against Kansas City and then maybe contemplate shutting him down and getting Perkins involved and Wolford involved and trying to figure out who is going to be QB2 and QB3 here in terms of the rotation next year. But the fact that he got injured again and it's head and concussion, and the NFL came out and said that they are monitoring this situation. They certainly don't want more criticism and more missteps since the Tua Tagovailoa situation. All of those elements makes me feel like this is the end of the season for Stafford. And then it's a conversation with his family. It's a conversation with Sean McVay about what he wants to do, about whether it's beyond that. In terms of on the field, Ryan, I thought I was very encouraged before he got hurt, actually. Obviously, the deep shot to Tutu Atwell, second catch of the year for Tutu, getting in there, making it 7-3. Then the offense stalled, as it has throughout the season for most of that first half. And I think what was so tragic about this game to a certain extent is I thought that last drive of the first half that gave the Rams the lead 14-10, I thought that was the best drive of the year for the Rams this year. They started inside the Saints 10-yard line. They went 91 yards in 4.5 minutes. You saw Allen Robinson get involved. You saw Van Jefferson get involved. You saw Stafford starting to have some trust in some other weapons, and it was the smoothest the offense looked all year. That drive was the best drive I saw the Rams play all year. And then for him to get hurt that first drive of the third quarter and not be able to build on that chemistry and that rapport and that momentum for a couple of weeks really hurts, because you'd love to see him build that with Robinson and Jefferson in particular to kind of be the complements to Kupp next year. So it really felt, the heart felt empty there in terms of wanting more. It felt like a lost developmental opportunity going into 23.
Yeah, absolutely. And there were some good things from this game early on of like, you know what, these are two not very good teams right now, and they're struggling on both sides of the football, but the Rams did some fun things. Like you mentioned, we saw Tutu with that 62-yard touchdown, his first career touchdown in the NFL. Wild that it's taken this long. Well, I guess he missed all of last year, but still you'd think they'd get him more involved, but we've neither here nor there. We've talked about that a lot. But we got him involved at least for one play. And then it's like, even before he goes out, though, you get back to some of your old things. Like from that play, Tutu never targeted yet again. I don't even know if he ran a route again. He was on the field for a few more plays, but they were like seemingly rushing plays. So it's like, why not continue to use him a little bit in different areas? We saw some good things out of Kyren Williams. I think that was the one bright spot. I know he only had 7 carries, but averaged over 5 yards on each of those carries. And obviously with the news just dropping today, which we'll get to in a minute, he's going to be the probably featured back here in another, maybe he'll take one more week, but I'm sure in the next 2 to 3 weeks down the line, he will be our featured back that we will kind of really get a barometer for heading into the offseason about what they want to do with the rest of the backfield to couple with Kyren Williams. So that was good. Defensively, probably one of their worst games, if we're being honest. I think the defense has been the one bright spot of this team. 27 points isn't a ton, but when it's to a Saints team that has really struggled offensively, Andy Dalton, he's a veteran QB. He's done some good things in his career, but he's not a dynamic QB anymore. You know what he is? He's a pocket passer that kind of dinks and dunks. And when you allow him to go 21 of 25, it's almost like perfect efficiency there. Hit a couple deep shots, especially to Chris Olave on that one where he just cooked Jalen Ramsey and Taylor Rapp on the back end. Just some not great things there. I think the thing that was most frustrating in that particular play, Jamal, and we've both been kind of champions for Raheem Morris. I don't think this game changes that. You can have one bad game in certain play aspects, and it's not going to hamper your entire outlook as a coach. But when you look at personnel-wise, and when you watch that play specifically, the one where Chris Olave goes up the seam, burns Jalen Ramsey, and Taylor Rapp's just out of position. Now, from what it looked like, it was a man coverage with just a one high safety look. So it was Jalen's responsibility to stay on him. He absolutely just got torched looking in the backfield. But still, when you look at from a defensive personnel standpoint, I don't understand why Taylor Rapp was your one high safety. Like anyone out there knows, Taylor Rapp is better in the box. He's not a one high or even a 2 high deep zone coverage safety. That's just not what he's good at. He wasn't great at in college at Washington. He wasn't drafted to do that. He's more of your bigger, bruising, almost linebacker safety hybrid to play in the box. And when you have him as your island safety, as your last known commodity, I'm sure the Saints were like, oh, look who's back there. Let's throw a little hot rat over here to Chris Olave and just throw one up, because we know that there's not going to be help over the top. So if you get past Jalen, it's a touchdown. And needless to say, it was. So that was the one big disappointment for me is we know what the offense is. We know the offense struggled. They did some good things. Great. We knew it wasn't going to be a phenomenal offensive output just because we haven't seen that once this year. So why is it going to change now? But defensively, when they've actually been fairly good the entire season outside of a few drives here and there, this was the one game where I was definitely disappointed in that regard.
Yeah, Ryan, I think that's a really fair assessment. You mentioned all the things about why Rapp wasn't set up for success there. I won't repeat it, but I think part of it may also be an acknowledgement of maybe having a little bit more confidence in Jalen Ramsey being a shutdown corner than the reality of the situation. And we've talked a lot about what is Jalen Ramsey, who is Jalen Ramsey now going into this season. And it's starting to become more and more evident that that playoff run last year was not a fluke, wasn't a slump, but it really is sort of the beginning of the decline of Jalen Ramsey as a perennial first-team All-Pro. Still a very good player, still certainly star quality, but I think the days of Jalen Ramsey being a superstar in the secondary are probably over. Mm-hmm. And I think this is just more evidence of that. Olave is a stud. Rookie out of Ohio State, leads the NFL in air yards. So essentially all the yards that you have as a receiver without yards after the catch, and demonstrated that ability yet again. In terms of Ryan, I think overall defensively, probably surprised that an Andy Dalton team was able to move the ball so effortlessly, in particular those two first drives out of the second half. When the Rams took that lead 14-10 going in the locker room, we actually felt really good about their chances of coming out on top. Give up the big play, Stafford gets hurt, and then the Saints march it down the field again with very little resistance. At that point, it's 24-14, two-possession game, and essentially that was a wrap. So the defense definitely struggled, and I think it's also telling, Ryan, that they're starting to wear out mentally as well. When you know that you have such a small margin for error and your offense can't really get anything done and the losses are starting to pile up, I think you're starting to see the defense also concede a little bit mentally and start checking out a little bit here. So I think we're fully into this developmental phase of the season for the Rams of who's really going to be able to come back. And the one bright spot, though, Ryan, I'll flip it to the other side of the ball before giving it back to you, is they ran the ball 30 times. We've been screaming for it for weeks. They finally did it. And the fact that they ran the ball so much, I think, is what enabled them to take that lead in the first half and stay in the game as long as they did. And Kyren Williams, I'm so excited about seeing what he's going to do the last 5-7 weeks of this season with 15, 20 touches a game. He's got spry legs. There's a new energy. There's a youth there. And I think we have the RB1 of the future for the next 3 or 4 years in this backfield. And I think building this backfield around him is going to be exciting.
If I can, I'm usually the glass half full guy. If I can be the Scrooge for once.
Yeah.
They ran the ball 30 times, but 6 of those were QB runs, 5 coming from Perkins once he came in. So still under 25, only 24 rushes from the running backs.
Fair.
14 from Cam, 7 from Kyren, 2 from Darrell, 1 from Powell. But hey, that's improvement. So there's the glass half full part. That is improvement. They committed to the run a little bit. There was a stretch there, Jamal, I think I tweeted it out in the first half, where they ran the ball like 8 straight times. And I'm like, they're moving the ball down the field. They were taking that's, I think, what ended up allowing them to hit the deep shot to Tutu Atwell. Like, it's so common sense to me. It's just, you saw it in action. It worked. Now, obviously you can't just do that every game, run the ball 8-9 times in a row, but it was working. And then in the second half, they kind of, obviously you get a quarterback change in there. Perkins is a very different type of quarterback. They did some designed runs with him. So improvement in the running game. Obviously, if it's going to be Perkins or Walford's show the rest of the year, you would hope we would see 25 plus carries every game from here on out. Hopefully we see a heavy dosage of Kyren Williams because, and here's the news, it'll be a perfect segue. Just announced today, I'm sure everyone's heard by now by the time this episode released, but Darrell Henderson and also Justin Hollins and Kendall Blanton all released today. Now, I'm sure all 3 of those guys, if they clear waivers, they will be added back to practice squad. But still very surprising move considering just the depth of this team, the injury proneness of this team right now. It's not like they have, to my knowledge, any guys waiting in the wings that they just need to get up to give them chances of wins. So it tells me that they want to see some guys that we may not even know about getting those reps for building next year. Like that tells me, even if they bring back a guy like Darrell Henderson on the practice squad, it tells me they don't see him as a future on this team, whether it's a practice squad guy or just not here. And part of it is just plagued with injuries. I mean, it came out again just yesterday or today that he only got 2 carries against the Saints because he was having knee issues and warmups. So unfortunately, the guy just cannot stay healthy, cannot put it all together. And then I think just not saying anything happened personally, but it just seemed like he was drifting apart within the game plan of what Sean McVay wants to do. And we mentioned it, the fact that Cam Akers was seemingly off this team for 3 weeks, and his first week back, he's the lead back again, while Darrell Henderson's been here the entire time. So roundabout way of saying this truly is going to become Kyren Williams' backfield now, because you have the whole still the weird situation with Cam Akers. I think they'll definitely, against the Chiefs, probably split carries. And then I would assume after that, we'll just start seeing the lion's share go more and more towards Kyren Williams, because what they're going to have to do this offseason, Jamal, is no Darrell Henderson anymore. He's released. We already know Cam Akers is kind of on an island, and unless something really drastically changes, can't see him really have a future with this team. So you're going to go into free agency in the draft, which is with essentially one back on your roster that you trust in Kyren Williams. And so are you using a draft pick for, say, Zach Charbonnet, and you have a very fun backfield with those two? Are you going to go get a veteran guy to pair as kind of the third down back with Kyren Williams? Or how are you going to assess? So this now, these final 9 weeks or so, whatever, is an assessment on a ton of positions. But now with the release of Darrell Henderson, hugely on the running back position. What were your thoughts when you saw the news? Hendo no more a Ram.
Yeah, no, Ryan, I think you said it best. I think it made it abundantly clear that the running back room is clearing house. Akers was already sort of 1 foot out the door, and they just couldn't find the right partner. So during the trade deadline, so he came back, and now with Henderson off the team, essentially, with an opportunity to come back to the practice squad, it's Kyren Williams' show. And I think they really want to see what he can do and what he's capable of to sort of make that decision and pull the trigger in terms of who to pair him with in the backfield. Do you go get a veteran in the offseason? Do you make a draft pick? And we have our favorite guy there in terms of who we think that should be. But I think this is a firm evaluation phase. And then the Justin Hollins one was also very fascinating to me, Ryan. Again, pass rush. If I were to break down the biggest needs for the Rams, it would be offensive line. Who's going to be in the backfield? What's the state of this pass rush? And then who are going to be wide receivers 2 and 3 outside of Cooper Kupp? I think those are, to me, are kind of the 4 glaring needs. And they're sort of addressing the evaluation of the backfield. And then with the pass rush, figuring out, obviously, this was a huge miss in terms of missing Von Miller to pair with Aaron Donald, and just that dynamic between the two of them, where Aaron Donald can just clog up the middle and be Aaron Donald and be Superman. And then you've got a pass rusher, same side, opposite side, with all that versatility. They just never got that. Hollins was a disappearing act. Leonard Floyd comes and goes. Leonard Floyd's kind of had 2 games and nothing else, but 2 really good games. And so I think this is also an opportunity to evaluate the pass rush and say, who do we really need to build around for that to really become competitive again? Because as great as Aaron Donald is, Ryan, and he's certainly the greatest defensive player of this modern era, post Lawrence Taylor, post Ray Lewis, but without that elite pass rush, even Aaron Donald's effectiveness in a game, I would argue, has been mitigated somewhat this year. We don't hear his name the same way. He's not been able to make the same massive impact, play over play, game over game the same way. So you need to be able to arm him with a complementary pass rush for him to really be able to unleash all his powers. And if we really look at the fact that maybe he's got 1 more elite year left next year, and that window's really next year, you really want to be mindful of who you pair the great Aaron Donald with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we just don't know what his timeline looks like. Obviously, it's all speculation. And let's end the show with some speculation, Jamal. But before we do, quickly got to mention our other sponsor of the show, our friends at Liquid Death. Great mountain spring water. If you're noticing those tall cans what looks like beer or energy drinks in the water aisle at your local grocery store or convenience store. It is not beer. It is not energy drinks. It is, as I just mentioned, fresh mountain spring water from the Alps, and it's called Liquid Death because it is out to murder your thirst, and they are also aiding in killing plastic bottle pollution by donating a percentage of every can sold. So head to your local Vons, Ralph's, Whole Foods, 7-Eleven, wherever you get your groceries, or you can go to liquiddeath.com/LAFB to locate the nearest store to you where Liquid Death is sold. It's fantastic. It's delicious. Looks cool. It's a conversation starter. They have different flavored sparkling, or you can just get natural spring water. It's all great and for a good cause. So make sure to check out liquiddeath.com/LAFB. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. All right, Jamal. Shout out to his name on Twitter is at Defend the Den. He hit me up actually this morning to bring this to my attention. And there's been talks about this coach all over the league. But Benjamin Albright is a nationally regarded as a pretty good insider. He obviously is much more informed with the Denver Broncos out in Denver, works for KOA Radio out there, does a podcast, Broncos Country. And but he's fairly in the know. But this was purely opinion speculation. But he just said on his most recent radio segment yesterday, and again, defended and shouted it out to me. So shout out to you. Thanks for bringing this up. But he was saying, and he said it very nonchalantly, quickly, because they were talking about the future of the Broncos coaching staff and about Nathaniel Hackett's future and who could be the Broncos coach next year. And a lot of people in Denver, a lot of people in LA too, and it's more so on the Chargers side, keep bringing up the name Sean Payton. And what's to happen with Sean Payton? Because we all know he's going to coach again. But again, he's under contract by the Saints, so they have to essentially waive his contract or trade him, which most likely is what's going to be the case, is a trade to get Payton. But he said, and again, more speculation from him, but he said he thinks that Sean Payton will coach in Los Angeles. It's down to those two jobs. He just bought a house in Manhattan Beach. And so you have the Chargers, who still 5-5. If they make the playoffs, they're keeping Staley. I don't care what anyone says. I still think they should probably keep Staley anyway, but that's a different segment for a different show. But he thinks Sean McVay will retire after this year. He was pretty poignant about it. It wasn't a Rams segment. It was a Broncos, but he was like, Sean McVay is going to retire this year. His wife has wanted to do it. He's burnt out. You can see it this year. He's burnt out. Me and you have talked about it. You have said many times you think he was much closer to retire than a lot of people gave credit for. So he thinks he will retire, and he thinks Sean Payton potentially will be the next head coach of the Los Angeles Rams in 2023. Your thoughts on that?
I mean, it's fascinating. I don't disregard it, especially if he's looking at real estate here and, so kind of considering it. To me, the question with Sean Payton is obviously such a brilliant coach, a brilliant offensive mind. I would think he would want a little bit more stability at the quarterback position of what the future holds. And especially with Matt Stafford that's going to be 35 years old, coming off of now multiple concussions in all likelihood, what does that look like? To me, Ryan, I think Sean Payton would be an incredible coach. I just see that fit of Payton and Herbert being so strong there and such a natural fit of what Payton would do and wants to do that I would still probably lean Chargers right now. I completely agree with Sean McVay and where he is. I think he's very close to the end, and I think that's why the Rams are maybe one more year with this kind of core team before you have to really blow it up and start over. You want to hear my kind of dream scenario here, Ryan, for the Rams? I would love to see the Rams this year draft Zach Charbonnet and then go all defense and play a bunch of young guys. Look at the trade market for Ramsey. Look at the trade market for Stafford. Look at the trade market for some of their other veterans, basically everybody not named Cooper Kupp and Aaron Donald. See what you can get, stockpile some picks, and then go and draft Caleb Williams next year. You go draft Zach Charbonnet in 23. You go draft Caleb Williams at 24. And now you have your backfield of the next 5 to 10 years, and you de facto become LA's team in a way the Lakers are, the Dodgers are, because you pull in the Trojan fan base, you pull in the Bruin fan base, and now the Rams are the universal team in LA with their banner and now a 10-year run of success. and you rebuild with those picks around these two superstars. I think if I were Stan Kroenke, I would think bigger picture there of how do I capture LA in a way that truthfully we just haven't had yet. I mean, 24 years of not having pro football, it's going to take some time. This is how you get the 5-year-olds and the 10-year-olds and the 12-year-olds to love a team, and then their kids are going to love that team. And this is how you become a generational and iconic brand in LA, like the Lakers are, like the Dodgers are, like UCLA basketball is, like USC football is. So for me, that would be my master plan, and I would share that with Sean Payton. And if Sean Payton is up for that and doesn't mind having a rebuilding year and then developing a quarterback from scratch, let's do it. But if Sean Payton is more in that sort of Phil Jackson mindset of, hey, I'm not really a rebuilding guy, I want kind of a raw talent or a young talent and then take that team to the next level, then it makes a lot of sense that it's the Chargers.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's interesting because I hadn't really thought about it with the Rams, just because obviously the only way that happens is if McVay retires. But if he does end up doing it this offseason, then that's a very, actual possibility. And, it comes down to like everything you just said. I don't need to repeat it all, but if it's going to be really interesting to see, Jamal, what happens with Stafford, because if he decides to retire because of these potential concussions, and also we didn't even bring up the elbow, but that is potentially a real thing. We don't really know. I don't think it's that big of a deal just because they haven't really brought it up again since, and he looks like he was throwing the ball fine. But still aging body, he's a father of 4, has a beautiful house here in LA now. He got his ring. Like, why would you after this season even need to come back? Still 35 years old. You got a whole life ahead of you. He'll have immediately a booth job if he wants it, or even potential coaching job if he wants to get into coaching. So I think it's a very real thing that he walks away. But if he doesn't, then do the Rams, are they able to go to Sean and say, hey, Sean Payton, that is, and say, Stafford's our guy. We have him under contract for 4 more years. What do you say? Or would they need to somehow find a trade partner, like you alluded to, for Stafford, where they allocate some picks and do something like that? I mean, here's the question that we'll end with, because I agree with you. We've talked about it before. The dream scenario is get Charbonnet, get Caleb Williams in 2 years. That's the dream scenario, 1,000%. Is there any scenario, Jamal, and this is what we'll end with, any scenario where Stafford decides he wants to keep playing, but the Rams decide this offseason and they find a partner that will give up a singular first-round pick for Stafford? So they get a pick again in 2023, and they package that pick with, say, a Jalen Ramsey and other picks to move up in the draft for a chance at Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. Is there any possibility of that happening, or is that just like fools wishing of moving too much to get up too far?
No, I think it's a very real scenario. I think we have to sort of understand one thing. The Rams went all in, the Les Snead approach, the Stan Kroenke approach. It was the George Steinbrenner, Jerry Buss approach of let's go all in, let's mortgage the future, and it worked. The Rams won. They got the ring. Everything else is now house money after that. When you think about Stafford becoming 35, when you think about Donald becoming 32, I think they made all of those moves saying if we have Ramsey and Stafford and Donald and Kupp for about 3 years, can we get a ring one of those 3 years? Guess what? They got it year 1. This year is done, and then it comes down to next year. But you can sense that this team is starting to decline, that they're aging, it's declining. The enthusiasm isn't the same. The legs aren't the same. The energy isn't the same. And everyone feels a little bit burnt out and kind of done. And so for me, that's a very different way I would want to sort of enter a franchise if I was Sean Payton. And so if Sean Payton was a realistic opportunity, I would want to create a scenario for him where things are back on the upswing. And again, I think Ramsey, this is the time to trade him. It's only going to get worse from here. He's going to fall off a cliff in a year. And so this is the time to trade him. And I think with Stafford, this is also the time to trade him, because I'm not worried about the elbow. I completely agree with you. I think he's going to be fine. I'm worried about the concussions. And Troy Aikman prematurely had to end his career because of concussions. Now he's had 2. Let's say he gets hit again next year, Ryan, gets a 3rd. He's got a family to think about, all the reasons that you alluded to. I think it's very unstable. He got his ring. He left Detroit. He's at the 50,000 yards club. If Eli Manning gets in the Hall of Fame, Stafford will get into the Hall of Fame. So, I mean, he's sort of got his career lined up the way he wants to, I think you got to really explore it and set up now the future. Because I think this era is over for the Rams, truthfully. I think it's time to now start looking to the future. Donald is getting paid. You don't have to worry about him. He's going to decide when he wants to exit. I'm sure he doesn't want to have a down year. So whether that means he wants to retire after this year, retire after next year, he will probably retire one of those years and sort of have the perfect career for a defensive player. But I think it's time to start thinking towards the future. And the two biggest chips that you have are that are tradable are Matt Stafford and Jalen Ramsey, because I think a Cooper Kupp is going to really enjoy the challenge of being that bridge player that goes from sort of the Stafford era to whoever the new quarterback is going to be, and that'll really etch his legacy as an all-time LA Ram in a very different way. So you don't have to worry about Kupp and Donald per se for different reasons, but I think you start thinking about it. And I think it's important to be transparent with Peyton and see what's jiving. And if it's not something that jives with Peyton, I still think you need to think about it to set up that dream scenario, because that's how you become iconic LA's team. That's it, you know, and you get the whole city. Look, 76,000 were at that Victory Bell game, Ryan. It was electric. It was, 4 helicopter flyover, the buzz, the bands, the energy, the colors. It was unreal. Imagine having all 76 of those 1,000 all being Rams fans. I mean, that's how you take over a city.
Yeah, it's the only way. I mean, this team won a Super Bowl, and I feel like the needle hasn't moved a whole lot this year, just because everyone's ingrained in their teams. I mean, it's just a very different football culture here because of what's built. We've talked about it ad nauseum, so we don't need to get into that. It'll be very interesting to see. Obviously, all this is predicated on Stafford's health and if he's coming back, and who knows, he could end up playing this week if he clears everything, because we still haven't heard. It's all hearsay, but it doesn't seem likely whatsoever. I said last thing, but I'll do one more last thing just because, and we only got a couple minutes, you can be quick. But if that is the case, Jamal, if Stafford comes back healthy, but he wants to keep playing, Rams decide, you know what, we need to look at the future now because McVay's retiring, Donald's a year away. We don't have the horses to win with this roster, so we need to try to allocate. Is there a market for Stafford at 35? Obviously, when he was just 2 years ago, 33, leaving Detroit, there was a huge market. A lot of the Niners, the Rams, the Panthers, all the Broncos, all these teams were going after him. But now seeing how these veteran quarterbacks outside of Stafford, how it's happened with, Russ. So I think Russell Wilson will end up turning things around. I think he's too good to be as bad as it's been. But you see the Matt, Matty Ice,
Matt Ryan.
Thank you. Matt Ryan, you've seen his situation, the Carson Wentz's situation, all these other veterans that have tried new things and been traded, and really it hasn't lifted their teams. Do you think there will be a market like the New York Jets, the Atlanta Falcons, these teams that have good young rosters that just need kind of a good quarterback? But is there a market for that, really?
I think so, because I think you still got to look at the landscape of the NFL right now, where there's probably 6 or 7 elite quarterbacks, 2 of which are at the very end of their careers in Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. You probably have another 4 or 5 guys that are quite good. And then there are 15 to 18 guys that really could get replaced tomorrow. And, a team isn't going to miss a beat. As crazy as it sounds, Ryan, I think that there definitely is a market at the right price for a Matt Stafford being a bridge quarterback for that future. I think of, as crazy as it sounds, I kind of think of like a Baltimore Ravens as a really interesting scenario where, what do you do with Lamar Jackson? They've been hesitant to sort of put the long-term money. They're going to really look at this playoff run and say, can we really win with him? But no man's land is you're winning 11, 12 games every year and you're just fundamentally flawed in the playoffs. And I feel like Baltimore can only win one way. And maybe they sort of make an acknowledgement like, look, this might be tough, but if we really want to be true Super Bowl contenders, we may need to walk away from Lamar. Let's have a quarterback that keeps us competitive for a year or two, fringe playoff, whatnot, before we sort of, make that investment in the quarterback of the future. I think there's other situations where even the Jets, look at the state of the Jets right now with Zach Wilson. They got a great defense. Saleh is such a young, hungry coach. You plug a Matt Stafford in there, and all of a sudden, all you got to do is manage that team. Now you're threatening for the division. The Patriots, they don't know what they want to do with Mac Jones. They've got all this situation. I could see Matt Stafford plug in there and be exceptional. I could see Matt Stafford be exceptional in a lot of different situations here. The Saints, What do the Bucks do post Brady if he retires? I think there's a really nice market for Matt Stafford at the right price. And I think it's something that the Rams should think about, at least. Mm-hmm. There's only two untouchable guys on this roster. It's Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp. Those are your two pillars. Those are your superstars. Everybody else is a role player. I've said it for a year, Ryan, that Matt Stafford is maybe the best role player in the NFL, but he's a role player. And everybody not named Kupp and Donald, you should be taking some phone calls on.
Yep. And I'll give you one final piece or one final option. It would be interesting, and their quarterback is having a great year, but I think many would agree Stafford would still be a slight upgrade, and that's Minnesota. I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings, and guess who their head coach is? Oh, the offensive coordinator had Stafford's career year here in LA. So I think that could be a very, very real situation as well. All speculation, a lot of fun as always. That's all the time we have. This is the LA Football Show, your Rams edition. Stay up, Rams fans. It's still, we can still enjoy some of these games, even though if they're losing players, let's start looking at these pieces now, these younger pieces, and see what we can build moving forward and see what happens going from here. We'll be back right before Thanksgiving to do some preview shows. But if we don't talk to you all, have a very blessed Thanksgiving. We're so thankful for all of you. And hopefully you can spend some time with loved ones and family. So for Jamal Madney, I'm Ryan Dyer. This is the LA Football Show. Talk to you all soon.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.